All right, I've been sitting on this long enough. It's been done for about a week now. I've been sitting on, I don't know if it recorded the very beginning, but I just wanted to say that I've been sitting on this video for long enough and I'm just going to jump in and get it done and we'll see what happens. Before we get started, as I always do, I just wanted to put out a PSA. If you have any information regarding the person or persons responsible for my uncle's death on October 4th, 2011, at his home in Elizabeth, New Jersey, please call 1-800-822-8477. That's 1-800-822-TIPS, TIPS. His name was Charles Panchery, Panchery. He was killed in his home by an unknown assailant, or maybe there was more than one person, and left for dead on his kitchen floor in 2011. The case is currently a cold case, but when I spoke to the detectives recently, they assured me that if any new information were to come up, they would take another look at it. So please, if you have any information, please call Crime Stoppers at 1-800-822-TIPS. That's 1-800-822-8477. So this will be the first video in my Andy Warhol series. I am intending to tackle Andy Warhol's diary, just going day by day and going over the people and the players and the places, how much Andy spends. He's very meticulous about the amount of money that he spent on things like cabs and shopping and things like that. So I thought that would be pretty interesting. I did read the Andy Warhol diaries many years ago, but a lot of it I kind of just skimmed over because I didn't know the names of some of the superstars that he hung out with and the celebrities. Andy loves celebrities, but I figured this would be a good idea for me to take a look at this and really dive into who these people were that Andy loved to surround himself with. And if you saw this setup right now, you would just be like, Mubbo, for God's sakes, can't you just learn, Streamlabs? Can't you just learn? I have a portable monitor on a separate desk, and I have my webcam pointing at the monitor with a PowerPoint presentation that we're going to be looking at. Today, we need to go over some background information, though, before we jump into the diary. And I wanted to today take a look at the shooting of Andy Warhol, which took place on June 3rd, 1968. What the hell you got, 1968? That makes you so damn superior and gives me such a headache. Kudos to you if you know where that's from, but it's not important. So we're going to be taking a look at an article published in the La Negresse magazine in March 1984 by Fluxus artist Al Hansen. And I just have a disclaimer here. This is going to be my intro. I haven't written the music yet. Attention, attention. The Andy Warhol diary and the old Razzle Dazzle will be leaving the station. Final destination unknown. Today we'll be visiting Monday, June 3rd, 1968. That is all. So to start this off, some background information on Al Hansen. Al was a part of the Fluxus movement. Hold on, let me get my slideshow going, all right? Al was part of the Fluxus movement. Oh, I need to make a disclaimer. I will be borrowing from Al's article. Wow, I really wish these pictures would look better. I tried putting a light on the screen, but I did nothing but get a giant like glare. Let me just try really quick. Yeah. Is that a little better? The pictures are really dark. Al Hansen was a Fluxus artist. A Fluxus was a movement that was popular in the 1960s and 70s. It was a movement to reject elitism and make art accessible for everyone. It emphasized the artistic process versus the finished product. And that lends a lot of credence to Andy's question of what is art. Andy was always asking that question, like, is art the thing that can be bought and sold, or is art the creative process? And that's why he didn't feel really all that guilty about a silkscreening process. Yes, anybody can do silkscreen, but if you think up the process, and Andy really developed it to the point where he can mass produce these portraits and pictures, and Andy considered that the artistic process more than the thing that he could sell to somebody. So Al Hansen was also interested a lot of in intermedia, and that is, think of like a film that's showing while music is playing. So the work that Andy Warhol did with the Velvet Underground, where Andy's film would be showing on a screen, and then the Velvet Underground would be playing live in front of the movie. That's part of the intermedia or visual creativity. And some other artists that are associated with that are Joseph Beuys, for one, and John Cage, and of course Yoko Ono, who would do these these little pop-up like art installations before pop-ups like really became a thing. Like, she was out there just presenting her art. Al Hansen is Bibi Hansen's father. She starred in a few Warhol films, and Bibi had 3 children, one of them being singer Beck. Now, there is a rumor about Bibi and her husband, David Campbell, and Beck, that David Campbell was a serious Scientologist, and that Beck was heavily raised in Scientology, and they were all about Scientology and buying into this cult religion and this and that. And in 2019, Beck decided to come forward and say that he is not involved in Scientology. Now, it wouldn't be a big deal for Beck to come out and say that he wasn't involved in Scientology. You know, who wants to be tied to a cult? But the interesting thing is the timing in this, where 2019 is where all of this stuff started coming out about Danny Masterson, and his Scientology covering it up and covering for CP and SA, and everybody's told to keep quiet. I think there's something weird in the timing. Like, nobody asked Beck if he was a Scientologist. He was not on anybody's radar, but he felt compelled to come forward and say that he wasn't a Scientologist. I just thought the timing was a little weird. So how this all started, let me go to my next slide. Andy was having his first book made called A. It was being transcribed from audio tapes by Maureen Tucker, who was the drummer for the Velvet Underground at the time. She was in the band with Lou Reed and John Cale, and she really found that due to her musical demands, especially from Lou Reed, he was a very, very demanding musical artist. If Andy knew of anyone who might be interested in transcribing these tapes, he just had mountains and mountains of tapes. And Al Hansen said, yes, he had a friend named Deirdre McGowan. I tried looking for Deirdre McGowan, but it's a very popular name. And the only thing I could find about a Deirdre McGowan is she was a doctor for the Technological University of Dublin. And I tried to follow Al Hansen's description of her. All he described her as was curly, red-haired, and a white-skinned Gaelic beauty. And that's pretty much every Deirdre McGowan, if you try to search for that name. They're all these beautiful, like, Irish women. So Andy's factory, on June 3rd, 1968, was located at 33 Union Square West on the 6th floor. The wiki says the 8th floor, but I think he might have owned multiple floors in this building. He might have rented multiple floors, like one maybe for his office and one maybe for the art and one maybe for, whatever. His personal cloister, that he liked to hide himself away in. So you can see right here, this middle building right here is the Decker building. And he was in this location from 1967 to 1973. So on June 3rd, Alan Deirdre set off from the Chelsea Hotel located at 222 West 23rd Street in New York City. And I made a little map here. They would have started off and they would have walked from the Chelsea to Andy's office. Other people on their way over, they just happen to bump into, hold on, I need to get my cursor here, is Gerard Malanga, who was Andy's assistant and right-hand man. He worked with Andy from 1963 to 1970. He started off as a studio assistant, helping Andy with silk screening, and worked his way up to Andy's most important associate. He also appeared in a number of Warhol films, and he became the founding editor of Warhol's Interview magazine. Another person that they bumped into on the way was Angus MacLeese, who's very, very dark in this picture here. I apologize for that. I will work on the lighting, but I can't get it to work with the angle that I'm on right now. Angus was the first drummer for the Velvet Underground, and he quit the band after disagreements regarding their first page show and accused the Velvet Underground of selling out. He had a wife named Hetty McGee. And on an interesting side note, see, this is where the Razzle Dazzle comes in. It's Andy Warhol Diaries and the Razzle Dazzle, which means all this Razzle Dazzle that you're getting is extra stuff. So one of the interesting things about Agnes and Hetty, I can't get my cursor. Here we go. Agnes and Hetty had a son named, I think it's Ocean, Ossian. And Ocean was recognized by the 16th Karmapa, which is a Tibetan spiritual leader, as a reincarnation of a Tibetan saint. And Ocean was ordained as a Buddhist monk at the age of 4. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Andy sure knew some interesting people. While walking to Union Square, a thunderstorm began and they ran into a coffee shop and they waited for the rain to stop. Now, this is very important because this unplanned stop might have saved their lives. They were on the way to Andy Warhol's office while Valerie Solanas was currently upstairs. And during this time, he was shooting everybody in Andy's office, primarily concentrating on Andy, of course. The party crossed over to 14th Street. I have a little map here that shows, it would be the slide before this, on their way over. As they crossed the 15th Street, Valerie was busy shooting everybody in the office, and she shot Andy the most. As they arrived at the Decker building, Hansen and his friends went into the elevator that Valerie had just come out of, and there was only one elevator for the entire building. Valerie was now loose on the streets of New York City. In those days, there were no 911 services. 911 was not implemented until 1 month later. I think my slides are out of order. You're going to have to bear with me. I think my slideshow is out of order. I could swear I had it right. In those days, there were no 911 services. 911 was not implemented until 1 month later. To get an ambulance, you had to dial 0 for an operator, and then they connected you to an ambulance service, or you could call for the police or the fire department directly using the phone number in the phone book. But who had time for that, right? Or you could pull the emergency fire alarm, but that wouldn't guarantee that you would get an ambulance. I'm just going to go to my next screen here. Or, of course, if you were in the UK, you could call, the 0118-999-881-999. Who loves the IT crowd? I love the IT crowd. So now they're at the office building. They take the elevator upstairs. The elevator opens, and as they exited the elevator, they found the main room of the factory in chaos. Some of the people were screaming and crying and babbling hysterically. Hansen first thought this was a prank or a joke. Fred Hughes, whose picture's in the middle here, Andy's business manager, was on his knees and he was praying, asking everybody, have they got her? Did they catch her? And then someone shouting, Andy's dying. Other people shouted, did you see her? Did she shoot at you? Al still wasn't sure this was real. He still thought it was a prank or a joke or some wild drug trip. An editor of London's Art and Artist magazine, Mario Amaya, who was the person who introduced Andy to his silver tinfoil obsession, was visiting, and he kept asking, are there 2 holes in my shirt? She shot me, and if there are 2 holes, it means the bullets went through. Al Hansen confirmed there were indeed 2 red holes in his white shirt. Deirdre then turned to Al and said, Andy is really shot. She really shot him. He's dying. Come and look. Andy was lying on the floor, and it looked like he had been shot 6 or 7 times, and there was blood tracked all over the floor. Gerard Malanga was on the phone with Andy's mother, arranging to bring her to whatever hospital they were bringing Andy to. Average arrival time for police was about 20 minutes to a half an hour. Al made an attempt to pick up Andy with the intent of bringing him down the stairs and was screamed at not to touch him. Al argued that not touching someone was for after car accidents. If you're in battle and someone is shot, you pick them up and you run towards the medics. Al remarked that he really wanted to pick Andy up, but he just got his suit out of the cleaners, and Andy was covered in blood. He figured a smarter idea would be to go back downstairs and look for a doctor in the building or on the street, somebody who knew what to do. Al ran into the elevator and pushed the down button, but the elevator started rising up instead. The door opened and a delivery man started loading boxes into the elevator, saying that he needed to get his truck loaded in 10 minutes or he'll lose his job. Al started screaming that Andy Warhol has been shot and someone was attempting to murder him. The delivery guy just kept loading boxes into the elevator. Al climbed over the boxes and started running down the stairwell. He got to the street to look for anyone who may have been able to assist. He yelled for a doctor to come and help, and a person was dying and they had been shot, but nobody seemed to pay any attention. He ran over to a phone booth and tried to call a doctor friend of his whose name just popped into his head, but the booth was occupied. Al pounded on the door and shouted, "Emergency, shooting!" But the person on the phone just gave him the finger. The old New Jersey salute, as we call it. In desperation, Al ran over to a corner luncheonette. He was able to get on a payphone, but he had no small change. People were yelling and complaining that Al cut in the line. No answer at his doctor friend's office. He called the police again. He was told they were on the way. After Al hung up, he heard the sirens. He told the EMT that it looked like Andy had been shot with a small handgun. Al advised the elevator may be too slow and the EMT should run up the stairwell. All of them ran up 8 flights. Andy was placed into a canvas folding chair and hooked up to blood bottles, plasma bottles, tubes, and needles, and they went slowly down the stairwell, carrying Andy. Al took the elevator down and got there in time to see Andy being loaded into the truck and driven off. He was being taken to Columbia's Hospital on East 19th Street near Max's, Kansas City. So here we have Andy's office, and they would be going like this. Al was still on the scene at the Decker building when a cop asked if he knew who shot Andy and what she looked like. Al replied that Valerie was possibly wearing a white lab coat as she worked in a chemistry lab at the time, and she could blend into the New York street crowds. Later on, Andy Warhol confirmed that Valerie rode up in the elevator with Andy to the office, and she was wearing a fleece-lined winter coat and a high turtleneck sweater. Andy remarked that she seemed out of place and that the outfit was too hot for June. Al was familiar with guns and opined that when you get shot with a small pistol, the bullet goes round and round. The doctors would have to cut open the whole path of the bullet and clean it to prevent infection. Andy was wheeled into the hospital with a bunch of nurses, all doing different jobs of either pushing, pulling, wheeling bottles of tubes, connected hoses, which were inserted into Andy. Andy was wheeled into the elevator and taken to the ICU. The hospital lobby was full of superstars, like Bridget Berlin, aka Bridget Polk, whose father was a chairman of the Hearst Corporation. She got her Polk nickname as a result of poking people with vitamin D injections. Can you imagine doing that now? Like, she would just go around with a needle and just use the same needle to give people like pokes of vitamin D injections to like perk them up, which was a big thing. And actually, if you've ever seen um, Edie's movie Chow Manhattan, there's a scene in there where she and her friends all go to the doctor, and the doctor just gives them all like vitamin D injections to like perk them up. It's a pretty big scene. That's a really good movie, by the way. It tells a lot about Edie, and the soundtrack is fantastic. If you ever get a chance to see it, Chow Manhattan. Oh, okay, hold on. How did I just do that? Oh my gosh. Okay. Bridget was also a fanatic about recording the goings on at the factory, and her tapes were used as the basis for the Velvet Underground's first live album, Live at Max's Kansas City. So that's Bridget on the left. I know you can barely see her. I'm going to work on the lighting. Bridget was involved in a prank orchestrated by Andy when Andy announced that all of his paintings were created by Bridget. To this day, people aren't sure if that statement is true or not, as Andy did teach other people in the factory how to do the silk screening process. Bridget mostly was observed sitting at the office front desk from 9 to 5, never answering the phone, and never seemed to be doing any actual work. She brought her dogs to work with her and mostly knitted and ate bags of candy. She appeared in many of Warhol's films. She passed away in 2020 at the age of 80. There's a documentary about Bridget called Pie in the Sky, released in the year 2000. Bridget had the dubious honor of being the first person to photograph Warhol's body after his assassination attempt. The writer Blake Gopnik, formerly who was the lead art critic of the Washington Post, wrote a book in 2020 called Warhol. And actually, I just picked that book up. You can find that on Amazon for like $7. It's a pretty big book, but it might be worth looking into if you're looking to expand your Warhol book collection. Gopnik is fantastically thorough. The book is 900 pages long. I mean, that's not bad for $7. I mean, that's quite a book, not counting the 7,000 endnotes. You can get it for $7 used on Amazon. Because Gopnik is a vivid chronicler, here's a small clip from his description of the repair job Dr. Rossi did on Warhol's innards after the 1968 shooting. The surgeon found 2 holes in the arc of the diaphragm muscle, pierced both right and left as the bullet crossed through Warhol's body. An esophagus severed from the stomach so that food and gastric acid were spilling out from below. A liver whose left lobe was mashed and bleeding, and a spleen utterly destroyed and spilling more blood than any of the other organs. The bullet had also cut a ragged hole in Warhol's intestines, releasing feces and upping the chances of a fatal infection. I did not put the picture of Andy being shot. There is a picture of Andy with, and I'm guessing that Bridget took the photo. It has Andy and he's lifting up his shirt, and you can see like the paths of like all the scars where the doctors had to cut and basically follow the path of the bullet and like clean everything out. The next person that Al noticed in the emergency room was Isabel Collin Dufresne, better known as Ultraviolet. That's how she said her name. She specified she wanted every syllable pronounced, so it's ultraviolet. She looks like she pronounces it that way, right? She was also Salvador Dali's muse and companion in the 1950s. She was also an artist and author in her own right. In the 1960s, she became involved with the progressive American pop art scene, which put her right in Andy's orbit. In 1988, she wrote a book called Famous for 15 Minutes, which I have read, and it's very good. Famous for 15 Minutes, My Years with Andy Warhol. She would appear in more than 20 Warhol films, including documentaries made about the factory. After a brush with death, she became a Mormon in the LDS Church and was involved in charity work. She passed away from cancer in 2014. The next superstar that Al saw was Viva Hoffman, who's on the left in that picture right there. And the person on the right is Susan Bottomley, aka International Velvet. Viva was born Janet Susan Mary Hoffman in 1938. She was the oldest of 9 children. She appeared in several Warhol films and was an artist and painter. Viva was on the phone with Andy when Valerie started shooting. Viva started a friendship with Andy's mother, and after an argument with Andy about Viva becoming too close to his mother in an effort to spy into his personal life, Viva stopped all communication with Andy's mother. Viva had a child named Gabby Hoffman, who grew up to be an actress. Andy survived the assassination attempt. Solanus was arrested and sent to Mataswan, a hospital for the criminally insane. I think. Oh, there's the Warhol book by Blake Gopnik. So this is the mental hospital where Valerie Solanus was sent. She was sent to Matawan. I say Matawan because I'm from New Jersey, but it's actually Matteawan. So Matawan, a hospital for the criminally insane, located in the town of Fishkill outside of Beacon, New York. Today, the hospital is part of the Fishkill Correctional Facility. Fishkill is one of 6 prisons that incorporate Puppies Behind Bars program. Prison inmates raise puppies to be used as guide dogs for the blind, disabled children, and adults. Fully trained dogs go on to be service dogs for wounded soldiers. The inmates also manufacture beds, chairs, and computer furniture for sale to state and local governments through the Corecraft program. They also make heavy-gauge specialty items like security doors and windows for correctional and psychiatric institutions. Famous inmates include Paul Guidel Jr., who earned a place in the Guinness Book of World Records as the longest-serving prison inmate. He served 68 years. He was born in 1894 and died in 1987. He was granted parole after serving 60 years, but he considered himself institutionalized and opted to stay in prison another 6 years before going to a nursing home. Valerie was let out of the hospital a few months later. Let me see what this next. Valerie was let out of the hospital a few months later. Andy was never notified that she was being let out. Valerie got a gun and went over to Andy's. She headed straight over to Andy's studio to shoot him again. She was on a heavy dose of tranquilizers and she couldn't remember which pocket she kept the gun in. The staff in the office wrestled her to the floor and sat on her until the police arrived. Valerie was sent back to Matawan, heavily dosed with medication and given shock treatments. At the time of Al's article, Valerie was released and happy living as a homeless person and sleeping in doorways in the East Village area. At the end of the 1980s, Ultraviolet tracked Solanus down. Valerie had legally changed her name to Onzloh, Onzloh. She said she was unaware that Andy had passed away in 1987. Valerie passed away at the age of 52 from pneumonia at the Bristol Hotel in San Francisco, California. All of her manuscripts and typewritten pages in her hotel room were burned by her mother after Valerie's death. There's a movie about Valerie Solanus called I Shot Andy Warhol in 1996 starring Lily Taylor. Now, one of the interesting things that I wanted to go over with, as soon as I can get back to my high-tech presentation here, is Valerie Solanus grew up in a town in New Jersey called, I don't know what happened to my notes here. She grew up in a town called Ventnor City, New Jersey, which is right by Atlantic City. But one of the funny things about when I started looking for Valerie Solanas is I started looking to see if I could find her childhood home. Now, it wasn't specified what the address of her childhood home is. However, when I typed into Google Valerie Solanas's childhood home, this one house kept popping up like again and again. And I'm not saying it is, and I'm not saying it's not, but this may have been the childhood home of Valerie, and it's actually in a very nice area. I mean, if you're from New Jersey, the Atlantic City area isn't really all that nice, or at least it wasn't when I was growing up there. It was like as soon as you get away from the casinos and all the tourist stuff, like the neighborhoods are pretty rough, but this area is like pretty nice where she grew up. And you can see from this, or maybe you can't read it, but there's a note here from John Chidandra's Italian American Association that says that Valerie Solanas was born on April 9th in Ventnor City, just off the Atlantic City boardwalk. Her mother was a bartender and a dental assistant, and her parents separated as Valerie was 4, and they divorced in 1947. Now, this is really funny because if you play Monopoly, if you go into the Atlantic City area, you'll start seeing like a lot of the streets. And I thought this was funny, but I remember as a kid, whenever I would play Monopoly, I would never want Marvin's Gardens. Like for some reason, I hate the name. It's yellow. I don't like yellow. It wasn't my favorite. And I know the object of Monopoly is to buy everything. Like your first time around the board, if you have the money, you're supposed to buy everything, and therefore have your Monopoly, just like the name of the game. But I always hated Marvin's Gardens. But if you can see close enough on this little map here, right above the picture of Valerie's supposed childhood home is Marvin's Gardens. And Marvin's Gardens is actually, it's spelled differently. The real Marvin's Gardens is spelled differently than it is in the Monopoly game. And that's because Marvin's is actually a combination of Margate and Ventnor, which make up this little tiny neighborhood right on the borderline of these two towns. And it's actually a really nice neighborhood. Like the houses are like easily over $1 million. But yeah, she grew up in a nice area. If this was really her hometown, I mean, if this was really where her house was located, I need to find my cursor. There you are. So we're almost done here. Let me go back to my So Andy did survive his shooting, obviously. Of course, we all know that he died in 1987 from complications from a gallbladder surgery. It's supposed to be very routine. And it turns out that I believe Andy was given too much fluids. When we get to his death, we'll actually go in more detail. And I've thought about maybe doing a deep dive into Valerie Solanas, but like so much has been written about her already, and much better than I could ever do it. So I decided not to do that. Now, God, this sucks, man. Like I took these really nice pictures and they're like not even showing up. So we have the who, we have the where, we have the what, we have the how, but we're missing the why. Why did Valerie just bust in and start shooting Andy? Well, it turns out that Valerie had been bugging Andy for a long time to look at this manuscript that she had for a manifesto, basically, that's called Up Your Ass, where I'm just going to call it Up Yours, all right? And Valerie gave her one and all. Now, this was like before the days of like Kinko's and Staples, where you could just run off a bunch of copies. She gave him her only handwritten copy of her manifesto that she worked hard on. And she asked Andy if he would consider that as material for film. Andy, of course, being who Andy is, said, yeah, I'll take a look at it. I mean, he must have had so many people coming up to him trying to get them interested in their art, or they're working on a film, or they need a financial backing. It must have just been constant for him. Andy kind of knew that Valerie was a little off. So just to appease her, he took the manuscript, threw it in his desk drawer, or whatever he did with it, and he promptly lost track of it. Now, Valerie had asked for the manuscript back on multiple occasions through other people. Andy wouldn't even see her or take her calls, which even increased her paranoia, that she was convinced that Andy was so moved and so impressed by this manuscript that he was going to take it and he was going to make his own film based on this manuscript, and she was going to lose out on all this money. That is why she shot him, because she thought that he was going to take her work and make something out of it, and cut her out completely. So it turns out after Andy's death, the manuscript was actually located in a locked trunk in Andy's offices. And inside this locked trunk was the manuscript. Now, my question is, did Andy really lose track of it? Like, did he really just say, whatever? You know, Andy plays dumb, but he's not dumb at all. He's a master manipulator. He's 10 steps ahead of everyone else. Could it have been that he just didn't want the world to be exposed to Valerie's ramblings, and he locked it away, hoping that it would just never be found again? But anyway, they found it in this locked trunk. It's a spray painted silver trunk, and the trunk is actually located in the Andy Warhol Museum, located in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So if you have a chance to go out there, you can see the trunk for yourself. And it's definitely on my to-do list, but I rarely get out anymore. I rarely take trips, but it is on my to-do list. And there's, you can look at the Andy Warhol Memorial Bridge and all of these Andy Warhol themes in the town of Pittsburgh. So that's going to wrap up this first episode of the Andy Warhol Diary and the old Razzle Dazzle. I hope you enjoyed it. Another thing we're going to be doing is taking a look at what else happened in history today. So on this day, the day that Andy was shot, Canada announces that it will replace silver with nickel in its coins. Fun fact about me, I have a nickel allergy. I cannot wear gold or silver. None of it. I can't even wear even those hyperallergenic earrings. Like, I put them in and I just get this ball in my ear. And if you have an allergic reaction in your ears, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So I can't even wear earrings. Also, the Poor People's Campaign March on Washington, D.C. was organized by MLK Jr. took place, and it was a campaign aimed to achieve improvements in low-income housing, employment opportunities, and provide a livable income. Actually, that sounds like it could be happening today. And if anybody has any questions, I had to throw this in there. If you've ever seen a PowerPoint presentation in your workplace, this is always the last slide. So I wanted to leave you with this. And thanks for tuning in. I'll see you guys again. MUBBO.